Hey, everybody. I'm just going to glare at you for a minute. That's to give YouTube time to catch up because apparently YouTube starts several seconds after Facebook. But if you are tuning in from either Facebook or YouTube, welcome. And I am Kevin Tumlinson, and to my virtual right is Roland Denzel. And we go ahead, Roland.
Hey everybody, virtual
And
right.
you're my virtual right. And we are, among other things, we are authors and we are also co-founders of Indie Author Blueprint, which you may or may not know by now. So, Roland,
You should
I
know
just wanted
it.
to get that stuff out of the way so you could do your own intro.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We're very much looking forward to talking about this today. I am Roland Denzel. I'm an author of 6 nonfiction books, health and fitness, wellness, and I'm also a health coach and an author coach and small business coach. So it's really exciting to work with Kevin and hopefully work with some authors and help them through the trials and tribulations of starting and maintaining an author business.
Yeah. I guess I better do my official bio then. So
I
I
know.
am Kevin Tumlinson. I'm Kevin Tumlinson. I am a full-time author. I'm also the director of marketing for Draft Digital. I'm the host of the Wordslinger podcast, and I'm co-founder not only of Indie Author Blueprint, but also of Author Email with Nick Thacker. So I do a lot of stuff in the indie author space, and I love every bit of it. So
Yeah, I mean, before we go too much into farther, you are obviously in some sort of exotic location. I'm in my home
I
office,
am.
right?
Yeah,
You're in an exotic location because you are an author on the road.
I am an author on the road. Yes, I even own authorontheroad.com if you want to go
I
check that
know.
out.
I
Yes,
know.
I'm in Kerrville, Texas. We are at a RV resort here because my wife and I are full-time RVers now. And we've been here for about a little over a month, and it's beautiful here, and it's pretty safe here. No one is interacting. We don't, there's plenty of social distance. So
Well, it's just funny. It's fun because one of the things that's part of the author dream that actually everyone dreams of, oh, I want to just be able to write anywhere. And if I'm a
mhm.
full-time author, you can write anywhere, which is one of the realities, right? So, got a beautiful location there, and I'm going to be on the road next week.
Oh,
So,
where are you headed?
we are going to be going to a road trip to Southern California through Utah, Zion for 2 days, Southern California, social distancing and Airbnb there while we do some appointments, and then come back through Bryce Canyon and back home to Colorado.
There you go. And that is part of the beauty of this career is just the ability to do the work anywhere we are. Um, I know a lot of authors dream about that kind of thing, and they dream about leaving their day jobs in order to do this kind of work. How's that for a segue, Roland?
Very good. You're
So
super smooth.
now that's exactly the sort of thing we're going to be talking about in this little webinar. Now Roland and I both independently are able to do this stuff full time, and there's some ins and outs involved with that. But one of the things, and you probably saw this in the description for this webinar, is that the great irony of going full time was there was certainly a point in there for me at least. I know Roland's got his own experience, but there was a point in there where I realized that I was actually doing more writing when I had a day job than when I went full time. And technically now I do have a day job, even though I make enough from my writing to not have to have a job. Working with Draft Digital, it gives me something else in my brain to concentrate on. So we're going to be talking
Well,
about that and a whole bunch of other
kind of.
stuff.
Which one is your day job, though? Is writing your day
That's
job, or
that's a
is,
good that's a good question. That's a very good question. It's like, which one's the side hustle, and which one is the day job?
yeah, that's the
I don't know.
benefit. That's the benefit of being an author
Chicken
and
and
having
egg.
all this stuff, right? Like you get to define which is the role, or like whether it's divided up into things.
I think that actually is so. When people talk about the dream of being a full-time writer, I think that's actually what they're talking about. They don't realize it. It's like it's not about sitting around and all you do is write all day, and the rest of the time is yours to just screw off or whatever. I mean, it really comes down to are you doing something that's meaningful in your life? And is what you're doing, basically it does come back to that, right? Is what you're doing meaningful to you? That's what you're really asking for. The liberty to do something that is meaningful in your life.
Yeah, I think it gives people want freedom, like not only freedom to do things that are meaningful in their life, but they want freedom to like indulge in these things that are passionate for them, that they also know they can't maybe not make a full-time living at, right? So I think something like having like being a quote unquote full-time writer, full-time author gives you this freedom to do these other little sort of niche things that you want to do, that sort of it's passion projects, fill in the gaps, and it just gives you so much more freedom to do these things. Just like being having an entrepreneurial job might be, right? So like you do these things, and it's great.
Yeah, you are an entrepreneur as a writer.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people don't quite think of it that way, but that's the reality of this as a business. You'll hear people talk about writing as a business. And I apologize, by the way, if I cut out or anything like that. I am on a completely mobile setup, so if I freeze up or cut out, I don't notice it, but you might. So I apologize in advance. But I forget where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought once I started apologizing.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, it's a business.
Yeah.
Being an author is a business. You hear that a lot. It really does come down to that entrepreneurial mindset. So, because when you hear a lot of times when new incoming writers hear things like marketing is important, and having a mailing list and having a top of funnel offer and things like that, they kind of, I think that's a little daunting to some authors. So when they start thinking about the full-time writing career, I don't know if they consider that part of it, but I do know personally that a lot of authors get a little intimidated by that.
Yeah, either intimidated by it or they get turned off by it because they feel like it's suddenly they're going to have to be going into some sales mode. But I would encourage you that if you have that feeling that if you want to be an author, but you just feel bad about telling people about your books, just remember that your book is amazing. Like it's got an amazing audience and people are looking for books. It's not like you're like tricking them into buying a book, right? You should be proud of your book. You put a lot of work into it. It's going to be great or it is great. And you shouldn't feel like you don't need to be like sell. But people are following you and they're looking for you and your books.
You do want to help the reader that's actually out looking for your work. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to find it. So let's get in. You were kind enough to send me last second, but I still got them.
The benefits of being an author.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the prompts. I've got a whole list of them here. So first up, when it comes to the full-time author lifestyle, so what you think will happen. So Roland, why don't you tell us a little of your experience about what you thought the full-time life would be like?
Well, I thought it would be, wow, like everything's just opened up for me because I no longer have to get up super early just for 2 hours before I have to hurry up into shower to get ready for work and then squeeze in like a half an hour writing in between meetings on my lunch break and then struggle to write after hours because when I'm exhausted from full day of working. So I'm like, oh wow, it's going to be great. So instead of having 2 hours a day to write, when I'm lucky, I'm going to have all day to write. But instead what happened is I would still write for 1.5 to 2 hours and my brain, I didn't have any more creative juice. Right.
Yeah. It turns out that wasn't actually a limitation of, I don't have enough time to write. It was a limitation of this is as much time as I can put into it, focus wise, right?
Yeah,
and still be creative.
Yeah, and worse, sometimes I found that I was writing less, and that's a common occurrence, especially when people flip that switch. Like when you flip that switch, the first week or two, maybe you are writing more because you're like, oh, you're super energized and you get up. But then the reality sinks in, and then you don't. It's not feasible for many people to write all day long, especially at first. But I started to realize, as do many authors, that you have all sorts of other things sort of weighing on you, like,
Right. Exactly
and that
right.
takes brain time spinning and takes away from your creativity, just to have all these conscious or subconscious worries going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I actually have, every now and then I go back. So I have a big stack of these little pocket Moleskine notebooks. And I don't have one on me, unfortunately, or I'd show you, but they're little notebooks about that big. And I always keep one. Every day I journal. Every morning I journal. And I've been doing it for years. And occasionally I go back through them, like with a mind toward, yeah, it's about like that. Not like that. That one's from the 20 Books conference from last year, but I'll go back through them to try. My goal is I'm going to organize them and digitize them, and that never ends up happening. But what does happen is I read through them and I get like this nostalgia. But I had one from early in my career, early in my writing career. I was a copywriter at an ad agency. This was before I published for the first time. It was even before so I had a traditional contract at one point. This was before that, and I had written on a day in that journal my goals. That I will do this. These are my goals, and one of them was I will find 2 hours a week to write, and that was my goal. So my big dream then, because just like you were saying, I felt like I didn't have enough time between, I'd have to get up extra early and do the work, or I'd have to come home and, push myself to get it done in the evening. So just the very notion of finding 2 hours out of the week to write was a daunting task for me at that time. Now I write, 3, 4, or 5 hours a day just on my book stuff, and probably do another 12 hours of writing each day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But it's more than just flipping a switch. You sort of have to have a plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so what we've found, like we've talked to so many authors, and I think Kevin and I probably went through this phase too, and a lot of our friends, is like you look back and you're like, oh, gosh, I had retroactively, you're thinking, wow, I had so much writing time back then that I didn't use to my advantage, right? So like, it's not regrets in the sense that like, oh, I'm never going to get that. I mean, I'm never going to get that time back. I'm never going to get that opportunity back. So it's a valuable lesson, right? But what I want to, the reason this came up is Kevin and I were having this conversation last week. Gosh, remember, like, if I knew now what I knew then, I would have, I would have done all these different things, and I would have like an extra 2 books or extra 3 books. And I regret doing that. So we said, we got to talk about this. We got to tell people about this, because we don't want you to look back and with the same kind of a regret, because this is your opportunity now to see that other people have gone through this thing and like plan for it instead of just going through it and just assuming things are going to be better, and then 10 years from now or 5 years from now going, ugh.
Yeah. So we and we're gonna dive into this now. So the idea here is, a lot of times you sit around daydreaming about being an author, and what ends up happening is you decide, if only I were free of my job, I could do more writing, and I could finally have the career I want. I don't know about you, Rowan. I read a lot of we'll call them modern philosophy kind of books, like guys like Eckhart Tolle and that sort of the power of now and that sort of thing. And one of the things that they talk about, that he talks about in particular, and he's intertwined all this with this idea of ego, but this idea that sometimes we are incapable of being happy. We define our joy based on something we either don't have, or something that did or didn't happen. We're always trying to like force this criteria to happen before we can choose to have the life we want. Does this make sense?
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I think that's something that we do as writers. Like when we're sitting at our desk, I remember sitting at a desk at a software company. I was the director of marketing for a software company. And, it was a great company. I loved all the people, but I was sitting there one day, and I had, at that point, I had actually started publishing, and I had maybe about 6 books out, And I remember thinking, if I could just, I mean, I'm writing in the mornings. I get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning. I write at lunch. I write after work. If only I could just consolidate that and just spend my day writing instead of doing, trying to write ad copy and whatever was needed to market this software company. I could just do my own thing. I would just get so many more books. Just think the millions of books I could write in a week if that was my only thing.
Yeah.
And then when I left that job, I actually had that opportunity. I had bought the stock in that company, and there was a whole thing there where I ended up with a good solid like 2 years worth of income set back to where all I had to do was whatever I wanted to do. I could just write all day, and I did, and I legitimately, the time in which I worked for that company over like a 4-year span, I wrote an average of a book a month. And then the minute that I left, I wrote an average of a book every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So, but we're at a point where we're going to talk about the benefits that a day job can actually have for you as a writer. And I think right off, we do have to point out the obvious, which is steady income is always a good thing.
Yeah. I think those are like, yeah, I mean, if we went to the end, that's not like really going to be our focus. But if we went to the end of this, people would say, well, what about income? What about insurance? Like, what about all these other benefits, right? Yeah, those are all there, and they all play into what's going to happen next. But what's really is mostly the deal is like you lose those things, and as a result, you lose that feeling of safety and stability.
Right.
And so you're like, in your case, you had 2 years worth of money socked away, but that doesn't stop you from thinking, oh, if this thing doesn't work out well, now it's only 23 months. Now it's only 22 months. And you can like see this thing going down month to month. And the longer that goes, the more those brain cycles are being wasted worrying about that stuff. And that's like sapping your energy to write.
Right. We should say, by the way, because somebody just popped in with this comment, and first of all, Martin Page, hello, listening with interest. Hello there, Martin.
Hey, Martin.
Jonathan wrote this, and I want to address this. I'm not going back to a day job, but my productivity did go down after I quit the job to write full time. I want to point out, we're not advocating that you should go back to a day job if you've managed to go full time. We're mostly talking to people who may be considering whether they should or can go full time with their writing. But I will say this, and Jonathan, you probably know this, and I know you do. I've seen things you've posted as well. There is that, even if you do have steady income, even if you are doing well with the writing, there is still that fear that it could all just go away. And there is something kind of comforting about knowing that even if you don't put a book out this month, you'll probably be okay if you're working for someone else. It does take the pressure off. And when the pressure comes off, the creativity goes up. You've freed up mental bandwidth. During that little 2-year stretch, by the way, I didn't have any insurance. So that was always back in my mind. Like I couldn't go jogging on a busy highway or juggling knives because I didn't have insurance. So I missed out on those important aspects of life.
Yes. Now you can. Yeah. Like
I can.
Like you just said also, like, we're not advocating going back to a day job, but we're advocating using the day job you have now to your advantage as long as possible. And because you don't necessarily have to rush into it. There are benefits, and there are many successful authors who still have their day jobs, and they wait until they're extremely successful, and sometimes also even diversify into other things. Right. So when they're giving up that full-time writing income, they've got a couple of different streams of income to sort of mitigate the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of their books.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just an hour ago interviewed Joanna Penn, who is a very successful indie author. Not only with her fiction, but she has nonfiction books as well. So she's diversified in that direction. And she has a podcast. And I happen to know she makes money from advertising because I'm one of her advertisers. Draft Digital advertises with her, so she has multiple streams of income. Even within the same space, she has, her books are available in print, ebook, and audiobook. They're available in every country worldwide. They're available on wide distribution. So she's a good example of this. Like, even though she is full time, she kind of keeps the gremlins at bay by having these multiple streams that she can count on. So it's sort of like, I always tell people, because I had a friend of mine who worked for Unilever, and Unilever happens to own Lipton tea. I believe it's Lipton. Anyway, he and I were in a discussion one day about, he was fascinated by this, and I was fascinated by it. But Lipton tea basically protects itself by having a blend of teas from like 50 different regions worldwide. So that if there's ever a blight or a drought or, anything that impacts this one region, it doesn't change the taste of their tea. The tea remains consistent. So they have a consistent, viable product all the time. I always liken that to, diversifying your income as a writer. You can still work in publishing exclusively if that's really what you want, but having multiple streams, affiliate sales, for example, having affiliate accounts with various retailers like Amazon, having your books available in multiple formats, having your books available in multiple markets, that's always a smart idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of sometimes there's some, people will almost look down on authors that say, oh, I'm a full-time author, but then you look, well, but you don't always bring in your income from this.
Right.
You also bring in your income from these courses you do, or you're doing formatting for somebody, like you have an editing business. So well, which is it? Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you are a full-time, making a full-time living, doing the things that you love and that support you, I think that's good enough to say you're a full-time and enjoy that sort of a lifestyle. Now, like in Joanna Penn's case, she's probably making enough as a full-time author only, right? Like if the other stuff dropped off, she'd still be qualified to make full-time, right? And
exactly.
But many of her other things qualify for that as well. So she's also a full-time podcaster, because she probably makes a lot of money off of the things that are affiliated with that. Talk about Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush. They're full-time authors, but they also make significant amounts on a bookstore they own and online book sales and publishing other people. So being a publisher doesn't mean you're an author, but it's something that they love in a field that they love, and they're making so. But it also sort of mitigates the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows.
Yeah. So that's where what this circles around to. And then we can move on to the next section of this. But I'm always ready with an example, right? A good friend of mine just recently, his father passed, and he received a very significant inheritance. Like, he suddenly became a millionaire. And in conversations, he has said, he doesn't intend to not work. He actually now is looking forward to going out and finding the sort of job that he always wanted to have, but couldn't always make a living at doing. So one of the advantages here is there may be things that you're interested in that you would probably pursue even as a writer, and because of the writing income, you now have that opportunity, but they're reciprocal. So as he goes out and does this job, he's got plenty of money, but he also won't have to worry. Like, if things go south, one can take care of the other. If his investments go south or whatever, he still at least has income. As a writer, for me, writing and working for Draft Digital, like, if the books don't do well, all of a sudden, something changes. COVID-19 changes the game, for example. I have income from another source, so I can be a little more relaxed and a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
So. Now okay. So how to know when you're ready to go full time? I think this is a question a lot of our viewers are going to be very interested in, Roland. So why don't you start? Because I tend to dominate the conversation.
Well, I think the big question is do you have to hurry up to try to be ready, right? So I think a lot of what we just talked about was like the potential downsides to your writing flow, right? So what you can do there is, if you think about it as transition, instead of like flipping a switch, going from full-time to full-time, start thinking about how you can sort of slowly transition. And that might not mean, you might not have a job where you can sort of cut back your hours or anything like that, but it can mean that you can stop looking for promotions, right? So so I had an opportunity to go into management when I had my day job. And I knew that was going to take me from a job that I could do. I enjoyed it. It was hard work, but at the end of the day, my brain was still fresh because I'd been doing it long enough that I did not have to tax my creativity much. So I knew, like, I had that job dialed in. So I knew exactly how long it took me to do this, how long it took me to do that. So I knew I could get up in the morning and do these things. So, but I chose not to get the big bump in salary of a management position because my goal was to continue to write and continue to do all these other things that I wanted to do. So then one day I could be self-employed.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I just realized, by the way, I was going to pop up another banner that had the URL to download the freebie, and for some reason it's not here. So I may have to improvise on that. So yes, I had similar moments. Just in answer to the question of how to know when you're ready, for me, it kind of got answered for me because the full-time job I had went away. And I benefited from having like stocks and things like that, but really it came down to I had to determine whether this was something I was willing to commit to. And there were questions. I mean, at that time I wasn't making quite enough to support me and my wife from the writing, and there were questions like, I remember Kara asking me, like, how long do you do this before you decide it isn't working? That's a tough question to answer when this has been your dream since birth. But yeah, well, for me, deciding when I was ready came down to whether or not I could support myself. So if I hadn't managed to get things going and be able to support myself within that gap of time where I had income set back, then I was going to have to go back to a full-time job, and this would probably still be a side gig, but I might have given up on it by then.
Yeah.
Who knows? So Roland, why don't you talk about this one for a bit? And if I seem weird and I'm looking off into this distance, because I'm searching for the next URL I need. So go ahead, Roland.
So transitioning from a full-time job, I mean, I think we kind of just covered that, because when you are, part of it is setting boundaries for yourself. And like, you need to pretend that you almost have to set the stage that you are already a full-time author, even when you're doing the other things. Right. So you have to get yourself on a schedule, block out time, and stick to those things as if that is what's bringing in your primary income, because you're practicing, you're putting systems in place to make sure that when that does happen, you're already ready to go. So you don't have to learn these new habits and these new systems when you're also trying to make your new living.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest one. Yeah, and also just doing a lot of research. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think also doing a lot of research and just sort of putting yourself in the place of how it's going to be when you are full-time, talking to other authors that you know that have gone full-time, and to see how they transitioned. There are some good author groups where people have done that, and where and also part of it is asking yourself how important is it for you to go full-time? Is it important? Yeah. Is it a wish thing? Like is the reality that you want to be a full-time author, or is it the reality that you want to produce the books and be able to put books out into the world that in the method that you believe that a full-time author, that it's necessary to be a full-time author, because it may
Yeah,
not be.
I think it is vital to examine what you think being a full-time author means. Uh, no, so in terms of like how to make the transition, it does start with that, because my whole life, when I dreamt of being a full-time author, I was that guy who always pictured. Actually, you know what informed me the most on this was the movie Funny Farm with Chevy Chase. I wanted to be the guy who had pulls on his ball cap and sits by this window overlooking a beautiful, estate, basically, lake and a farm and everything, and just start cranking out. And I wanted to get past the word but I did want to be that guy, like have that special space set aside, and that's my life and livelihood. But that and then now I kind of actually have that now, but it took years and years of working really hard to arrange my life that way. And I never could have anticipated the extra stuff that I have to do in addition to that. But for the most part, I think on the practical side, in order to transition out of a full-time job and into a full-time writing career, first of all, financially, you want to make sure you're pretty set. So, the recommendation usually is if you're going to go off and try something, you should have a minimum of 3 months salary saved and put back. I'd say probably you should aim for more like a year. If you can have a year's worth of salary sacked away to take care of you, and that should include your benefits. And if you have a spouse who's working and you can actually get on their benefits or something, that will be immensely helpful to you. So will their additional income. But that would be a real big consideration, as well as this is something I didn't really learn until I went through it the hard way. But make sure your spouse is on board with this plan, because I had that money sacked away when I left the other job, but I could have. Basically, my expectation was, okay, I've got a couple of years in which I can be a full-time writer with a safety net. Her expectation was, okay, we have a couple of years income. That will make it easier for Kevin to find a replacement job. And so there was a conflict eventually when it became clear that we weren't on the same page. So make sure you're on the same page. And I guess one more practical aspect of this is make sure that you know fully what it is you're trying to produce here, what the actual business looks like for you. Consider the things that are most important as a writer. One of those is craft. One of those is marketing and promotion. And the third is work ethic, really. I mean, making sure that you have the ethic to sit down and write each day. I can tell you that you can have a very lucrative writing career with just 2 to 3 hours of writing a day, and maybe even less depending on who you are. So it's not actually necessary to quit a full-time job if you don't feel comfortable with it. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely a couple things. One is that when you look at the number of books, like it's easier to market your books when you have more books, particularly if you're writing a series. So don't think that, oh, I'm going to go full time because then I can write my 3, 4, 5, 6 books. If you spend a little bit extra time, even with less time on a day-to-day basis, creating that series, then once you do go full time, you'll have a much easier time. You will have written more books, so you're going to know. You'll have more experience, and because of the way that books are marketed, you can more easily market book 1, which is going to carry through to book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you'll just have this income from each of those books instead of like, oh, this one book and this one book and this one book. So that's really something to consider. So it's almost like that time in your day job is investing in this series that you will then have as a benefit, right? When it's time, when you do go full time.
Right.
The other thing is you mentioned having a year's salary, like a year's worth of income, right, to fall back on. Well, that was pretty common, right? And like a lot of people would say, well, you know what, if I'm going to do this, and if it doesn't work out, I'm just going to go back to either my day job or get another day job that's similar, right? Well, something to think about right now with the current economy is that may not be an option. So you may find yourself treasuring, if you have a job that looks solid, this may be the time to sort of treasure that and think of that as, because it may not be as easy once you give that up. Some companies are going, oh, I don't have to lay that person off.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to be harder. It might be harder to get something similar on the way back in.
Yeah. Yeah. And right now there are a lot of people who are finding themselves, I mean, it's kind of starting to fade a little, but you know, there's still quite a few people who find themselves with a lot more time than they would have had. And this is a really good time to really knuckle down and get the books written, get them edited, get some covers made, in preparation for, if this is something you want to do full time. This is a great time to get some momentum on that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to always be possible for everybody. I recognize that. You know, it's my work. It's like everybody else got all this free time, and I got quadruple my workload. But all this feeds into that. I posted the question a little early, but make a plan and start now, so you don't have to look back with regret. And that's what this really comes down to. It's like, this is a good time, even without the COVID stuff. But you know, right now, perpetually is a good time to get started on working toward building that momentum, building up your resources. This is a great time to join online groups, make friends with other authors, go to conferences, virtual or otherwise, and just start kind of preparing yourself. But mostly it comes down to write. You know, create as much work as you can in advance of going full time, and it's going to make full time a lot easier. I don't think I could have gone full time with one book. One book wasn't going to do it for me.
No, and it's interesting right now. There's a lot of it in the news, in the author news, let's say, that about how bookstores are going under. All these traditionally published books are not doing well as they would have before. But what they're not saying is that online book sales are doing fine, right? And particularly ebooks, which is like what, if you write fiction as an indie author, ebooks are your thing. Yeah, you can have print books too, and they're going to be selling, but those are doing okay too, because you are using print on demand. So they're not stored in a big warehouse where the people are having trouble shipping them out. Amazon has not lowered the priority of shipping on print on demand books. They've lowered the priority of shipping on the books that they have to store in the warehouse to make room for space for coronavirus supplies and things like that. So this is a time when an indie author and even small publishing companies have the advantage because they're using print on demand and they're focusing smartly on ebooks and audiobooks.
I can tell you from insider knowledge that ebooks have exploded, and across all markets. You know, if you are out there, we actually have seen a huge spike in the number of ebooks that have come our way. So people are definitely taking advantage of this time to produce the work, but you're also seeing that same spike in sales. Somebody pointed out to me, maybe it was you, Roland, but I don't think so. I think it was Ernest Dempsey who actually was telling me, saying this to me, and it makes perfect sense. Eventually, Netflix and Hulu and HBO and all the Disney Plus, you're going to watch everything that's available there. You know, you're going to get to a point where you've run out of stuff to binge and stream, and these people are going to go looking for new content that they can consume. And books are safe. They don't. There's no way to contract a virus from a book. There's no from an ebook at least, and there's no way to. That book itself is not going. If it's an ebook, it's not going to take up any space. You don't have to even go outside to get it. You can just do it right from your mobile device. So this is a good business to be in right now. So we're at around 40 minutes. Roland, do you want? I want to make sure we get to our little offer, and we were kind of aiming for like 45 minutes for this thing. Unless you want to go longer. If people want to go longer, I can go a little longer, but 45 minutes is usually pretty good. Did you want to throw in anything else while we're on the topic of making a plan and starting now?
No, I just ask people to consider. I mean, even if you're in a job you don't like, if you are doing it, if you can do it well and not that you don't find yourself exhausted at the end of the day. Just you find a way to act as if writing is your job. Like take 2 hours in the morning or 2 hours in the evening, whenever you write best. Put that on your calendar and protect it. Act like that's an appointment with somebody important, because it's important. It's an appointment with you, which is the most important person, right? So make that appointment on your calendar and just stick with it. Turn off your phone if you need to. If like you struggle with that stuff, turn off your phone, turn off your notifications, shut down every other application, and open up whatever you use to write and just write.
That is a very good point. And that's something that can't be emphasized enough, honestly, because when you start talking about this in terms of going into writing full time and doing this as your full-time work, it is your full-time work. It is your job. And you can't, when I was doing it on the side, I was kind of casual about it. I didn't have to worry so much about keeping to a schedule. If I missed a day, it wasn't a big deal. But now, if I miss a day, it could derail my next release by a week sometimes, depending on how rapidly I'm trying to produce something. So, I set aside, I have my hours in the morning. I get up at 5 a.m. and I write until 9 a.m. and then I do D&D stuff. And whatever, and then in the late afternoon is when I do, toward 4 or 5 o'clock. That's when I'll start looking at other aspects of that career. Like I'll set aside an hour to do some marketing stuff, which I kind of do throughout the day as well, like just social media, and sometimes I'll do some of these live stream stuff that's more reader facing. But that's an important aspect of this as well. You need to make sure that you're setting aside time, just like you would for your day job. You're given a list of tasks and a schedule to get everything completed by. Well, you're the boss here, so you need to give your employee, which is also you, all the directives, all the resources, all the guidance and structure that you require in order to get this work done and done on time. So, all right. So, anything else, Roland? I don't want to cut us off entirely. Okay. So. Great. I had to do this on the fly, so it's not as pretty as it was originally, but we actually do have a freebie for you. Now we are asking you to get on our mailing list to get it. So just that's all the full disclosure stuff. But we're pretty light. Today was the first email we've sent to that list in probably a good solid month or so. So you're not going to get inundated and spammed by us, but this might be interesting to you. It's a very short read. It's a guide I wrote, about 5,000 words. So you could probably read this in an hour. But improve your writing craft is the actual title of the book, and you can get that for free. It's going to be actually available through all the retailers soon, but right now you can get it for free if you go to this link and download it. And you only know about it if you see it here. So go check it out. That'll put you on our mailing list. And we'll be adding some stuff as we go from that list. I figured out what's wrong, by the way, Roland. I'm in the wrong show as far as my banners. I don't know if I can switch or not. Let me see if I can switch. Can I switch? Okay, there we go. Here we go. So that's a scrolling one. Let's go to this one. There we go. So if you go to indieauthorblueprint.com, so this is what Roland and I have been building, and it's a place where we're going to be putting all the resources we can find, from blog posts, podcasts, news items, products for sale, anything we can find that can help the indie author community. This is where you're going to find it. So we have a person behind the scenes. Her name is Sarah, who's helping us gather a lot of this content, but we're going to be producing more content like this in the future, and even looking at creating courses and some other things. Roland, what do you want to chip in here? I just took that over.
No, we started Indie Author Blueprint because we know so many authors that ask Kevin and I so many questions, and we're like, gosh, like they don't know about things that we just take it. People, if you are an author who's been an independent author for a while, you know about all these things, and draft to digital. You know how to produce a book and upload it to Kindle. Like, you just know how to do these things. But there's so many authors that don't know how to do these things. So we wanted to make a hub of all of the best vetted indie author resources that we could find. So you can go to one place and you can find these things, and you can, if your dream is to be a full-time author, you can get there that much faster.
There you go. That's the goal. And if you really are looking to go full-time and leave the day job, our hope is that the resources at indieauthorblueprint.com will help you do that a lot faster. And if you're looking to up your game and improve your craft, I hope you'll check out this little guide, which you do get for free when you sign up for our newsletter. So it's bookhip.com/DLHMVK. I don't have a pretty link for that, but if you'll jot that down,
can they click it?
Happy to give you a free. I don't think they can click it from that thing. I don't think so. And I have no way to drop it into comments because I'm using my phone.
Oh,
so
okay.
Downsides. You want to do it? You got it. Right?
Well,
drop it in the comments.
I have to.
We can do it after the show. If you're hanging out in the comments after the show, Roland will drop this in so that you can click it and get that book.
I have to type it because I'm here too.
Didn't I send it to you? I sent it to you in Messenger.
You sent me the earlier one, like the long one, that long one.
The long one. Okay. All right. No problem. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up from here. We really appreciate you tuning in. I see quite a few people. I'm really happy to see you here. Real quick, I'll run through the comments that have come in. Great conversation, Jasmine says. Thanks, Jasmine. I love Jasmine. And she and I used to work together. Great conversation. This wisdom applies to all creative professions. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and experiences. And hey, thanks, Mikey. There's the link. It's now you can find that in the comments. He saved us some trouble.
Oh, sweet. Thank you, sir.
You're a superhero, Mikey.
Is that on YouTube or Facebook?
That is in Facebook. So if you're on YouTube, I apologize. We didn't manage to get it on YouTube. So I had some technical difficulties with this. So you can't even see the rig that I'm using, but I had to last second, the little thing that I was using to do this kind of fell apart, and I had to basically rebuild it with Velcro. So anyway, thank you everybody for popping in, and I appreciate all your help as well. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up now. Roland, do you want to give any parting words of wisdom or advice?
Yeah, just consider how good you have it now.
Yeah. Did we lose you?
No, it was like the other sound from YouTube started showing up all of a sudden. It was like an echo. Yeah. Consider how good you have it right now, right? You may not love your job, but it's providing you stability and the ability. And even though it seems like it's taking a lot of your time, it is providing you that time and the freedom to write the books that are going to one day take you to full time if that's what you want to be. So don't look back and regret. I mean, everyone here has some sort of regret. So you know what regret feels like, but this is one that you can avoid.
Exactly right. And on that note, we hope you got something really useful out of this. Make sure you pop over and pick up your freebie. We are happy to give you that, and we would love to have you on the newsletter. And make sure you are checking out, I lost the banner. Make sure you are running right over to indieblueprint.com to find indieauthorblueprint.com. Did I mess that up too? Great. All right. Indieauthorblueprint.com to find all kinds of resources to help you out in your indie author career. And we will be doing more of these, so get on that list so you find out when they're going to happen. And otherwise, we will see you all next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.